just for a bit of context, 1929, you have the Wall Street crash, and then what ends up happening from that is, the country ends up going into recession. So not overly like crazy one. There had been recessions like this throughout America's history. However, this was the first recession in which the US government decided to actively get involved and to try and like fix, right? And the problem is they just made things worse, right? All the measures that they did made things worse. The Federal Reserve did a deflationary policy, so it actually, rather than there being inflation, like where the supply of money increases, there was actually deflation, something, I think they've reduced it by something like a third or something. And yeah, so this had very disastrous consequences for the US economy. And then on top of that, you had the Smoot-Hawley Act. So this was the tariff that was put in place as well. So the basic idea of this was just like with any protectionist policy, the idea was basically, if you have a tax on foreign imports, then, a lot of these goods will be made in America. And so this should create American jobs, American first, right? Now, the problem with that is it doesn't work, and actually just made the problem worse, because then other countries put tariffs on American goods, so then it ends up hurting everyone involved, right? And also you increase the price of things for consumers, so people have to spend more to get the same stuff, or to pay more to get worse quality stuff. So the distortions in the marketplace, combined with many other things as well, this is what made the recession into the Great Depression. So during this Great Depression, you obviously had many people who were in a very bad situation. You had mass unemployment now, and it was a situation where many people obviously needed money to support their families. And the angriest group within this whole debacle were the war veterans of World War One. So these are people who had served obviously in World War One, and they'd been promised in 1924 that they'd be able to collect their pensions early. And that was what they basically wanted to do now. They obviously had families to look after, they had homes to look after, and so they basically was like, we want to collect our pensions now. However, the US government under Herbert Hoover said no. So then what they end up doing is 17,000 former veterans combined with about 26,000 other like supporters end up going to Washington DC to protest this and to demand their pensions. So very cleverly, in an election year, President Herbert Hoover sent in the cavalry. And I don't mean that in like a metaphorical way, as in like, oh, he sent in the cavalry. No, he literally sent in the US Army cavalry to crush this thing, right? And it was led by General MacArthur, who, he would be very famous in the Pacific Campaign in World War II, and also in the Korean War, right? However, this time now, he was leading a part of like the US Army, and so he led the US Cavalry in crushing this protest, right? And these protesters were known as the Bonus Army. Now, the leader of this Bonus Army was none other than Major General Smedley Butler. So Smedley Butler, he had served in the Marine Corps for a period of 33 years, from 1898 all the way to 1931. And, he was a very, very brave serviceman. As a matter of fact, even to this current day, he is one of only 19 US service people in the whole history of America who has won the Medal of Honor not once, but twice, right? So this is how brave this man was. So he ended up leading this Bonus Army, and when he saw how Herbert Hoover had, sent in the troops to crush it, this lifelong Republican ended up switching parties and ended up endorsing the Democratic candidate FDR in the 1932 election. FDR obviously ended up winning this, and this is kind of what led to the alleged business plot. And throughout this video, if I forget to say the word alleged, apologies. Like the whole thing, it's still officially alleged, because the only testimony that we have, the only proof that we have of it, is the words of Smedley Butler himself. So that's something I have to say with a pinch of salt. It seems to be real, but it's still, because no one was ever prosecuted for it, it still is a thing where we have to kind of say alleged, right? So that's just the kind of caveat within this video. Now, Smedley Butler, in his years of service, took part in what was known as the Banana Wars, right? So the Banana Wars are a series of US foreign interventions in Latin America, and this is basically from 1898 with the Spanish-American War all the way up until 1934. So basically America, with the so-called Monroe Doctrine, basically had said a century before that the entire Western Hemisphere, so basically North and South America, it would be a situation where if the European powers already had colonies in those areas, then it would be left alone. However, if any of these colonies got their independence, then America would protect them from being invaded by other European powers. Yeah, so this is basically the calling of the Monroe Doctrine. However, how it actually manifested itself was that it was a way for American imperial and kind of business interests, to be able to expand their reach into Latin America and the Caribbean, and so that was basically kind of what actually end up happening. So especially with the presidency of William McKinley and then also Teddy Roosevelt, who we're going to discuss in an upcoming video, so definitely stay tuned for that. So these two presidents in particular got more and more involved in Latin America and the Caribbean. And the example that they set as presidents, would continue all the way up until 1934 with FDR's good neighbor policy, right? So this is where we start seeing a bit of a sea change, but the period from 1898 to 1934, this was the period where America was getting involved in places. And obviously Smedley Butler served in the US military for 33 out of these 36 years. And he would famously go on to write a book in 1935, which was titled War is a Racket. And he said the following quote within this: "I spent 33 years and 4 months in active military service. And during that period, I spent most of my time as a high-class muscleman for big business, for Wall Street and the bankers. In short, I was a racketeer, a gangster for capitalism. I helped make Mexico, and especially Tampico, safe for American oil interests in 1914. I helped make Haiti and Cuba a decent place for the National City Bank boys to collect revenues in. I helped in the raping of half a dozen Central American republics for the benefit of Wall Street. I helped purify Nicaragua for the International Banking House of Brown Brothers in 1902 to 1912. I brought light to the Dominican Republic for American sugar interests in 1916. I helped make Honduras right for the American fruit companies in 1903. In China in 1927, I helped see to it that Standard Oil went on its way unmolested. Looking back at it, I might have given Al Capone a few hints. The best he could do was to operate his racket in 3 districts. I operated on 3 continents." So as we've seen mentioned in this, America got itself involved in Honduras, in Haiti. Haiti, for instance, it occupied from 1915 all the way till 1934, and then many other places as well: Cuba, China, Mexico, like kind of all these different places, right? Guatemala, Dominican Republic. All these places America got itself involved in, and Smedley Butler was right at the very heart of it, and it was a thing where over time he kind of came to realize that he joined the army to obviously defend America and and the Republic and stuff, but he came to increasingly see that American foreign policy in those years was focused more on being expansionist, on being imperialist, and it was doing it for the interests of big business, and not for the interests of the American people. So with the alleged business plot, as we'll go into in a second, the very last person that you'd expect to lead a kind of a fascist coup would be Smedley Butler. So this is kind of what we're going to get into now when we talk about the alleged plotters. So the alleged plotters included several people within the political and business elites within America. Most notably, you had J.P. Morgan, it was alleged. So, obviously a very famous banker and entrepreneur and stuff. So he was included within this. You also had John Davis, who had run for the Democratic Party in 1924. So he was on the ticket in the 1924 US presidential election for the Democrats. But he was a lot more conservative than FDR would later be. And on top of that, it was alleged that you had Prescott Bush. So Prescott Bush is the father of George Bush Sr. and the grandfather of George Bush Jr. So these are 2 very prominent recent US presidents. And so he was the father and grandfather of them two respectively. So he's very famous businessman and a politician during that era. So so it's alleged that he too was involved in this plot. And what this plot basically entailed was this idea that there would be a fascist coup of the United States, yeah. So much in the same way as they had overthrown the so-called banana republics in Latin America, they were basically going to turn America into a banana republic, yeah. So they're going to overthrow the president, they were going to overthrow both houses of Congress, and then they were going to basically install a military junta and like a fascist dictatorship in the United States. So apparently Smedley Butler was approached by one of the people who were involved in the plot, and they basically said, right, if you lead the bonus army and basically take part in this coup of the US government, then we'll basically put you at the head of this junta, and you'll basically be like, kind of, for all intents and purposes, the president, yeah. So we'll be the kind of power behind the scenes stuff, but you'll have all the like pomp and circumstance. You'll have an army of like 500,000 men that you'll be in charge of, and yeah, so you'll basically be the face of it because you're a very popular person and you're the only person that we can kind of get to do this. They originally had apparently wanted Douglas MacArthur, but obviously because of his involvement in crushing the bonus army, MacArthur at this point was very unpopular with the American people, so it couldn't be him. It had to be someone else in the army, and Smedley Butler was the most popular person that could have been. But upon hearing about this alleged plot, Smedley Butler went to the press and went to Congress and basically exposed this conspiracy. And so, as I said earlier, like, it's an alleged conspiracy. There was no one ever prosecuted by this. But we do have a video in the link in the description, which is basically Smedley Butler giving his testimony on what the plot entailed and stuff, right? So definitely pause the video now and go and watch that video. So. It's a small world after all. It's a small world after all. Have you watched it now? You've not watched it? Yeah, I know you've not watched it and stuff. Yeah, like maybe one or two of you have, but I know the vast majority of you haven't. It's fine. It's fine. We'll just continue the video, pretending that you've watched it. It's a very good video. It's only like 1 minute short. Like, watch it. Like, it will explain a lot. The rest of this video kind of won't make a lot of sense if you don't watch it. Just saying. Anyway, so we'll continue with this. So now that we understand basically what the plot entailed, we have to now ask the question of what if it had succeeded. So if by some crazy chance Smedley Butler had been tempted by this offer and had actually like gone through with it, yeah, that's what we're going to look into now in terms of like the alternative history for it.